Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder, the place where we decode the language of big business. And let me tell you, this latest annual report from Themes ETF Trust is a doozy packed with more funds than a Vegas casino. So what is the big story here? Well, it looks like Themes ETF Trust has been busy launching and managing a whole bunch of ETFs that double down on the daily movements of various companies. And guess what? They did really well at it. Before we dive further, remember, if you love getting these straight up insights from hard to read financial documents, make sure you are subscribed and let a like be your signal that you appreciate what we do. And hey, if you want to chat with us and other finance fans about these filings, join our Discord community. It's linked in the description below. Alright, let's get into what the company is actually saying about how it operates. Themes Management Company LLC is the investment advisor for all these funds. Their job is to manage the money to hit specific investment goals. They charge a management fee, which is pretty standard in the fund world. For each fund, this fee is calculated daily and paid monthly, all at an annual rate of 0.77%. It's important to note they are covering most of the bills for these funds themselves, except for things like brokerage, commissions, and taxes, which is a pretty sweet deal for the fund's investors. Now let's look at the meat of the report, the actual investments these ETFs made. Take for instance the Leveraged Shares 2x Capped Accelerated Coin Monthly ETF on the 31st of October 2025. This fund has a notional amount of $928,206 in purchased call options on Coinbase Global Incorporated. That is a lot of options, folks. On the flip side, they also have written call options for a notional amount of $1,856,412. This means they sold options too, betting that the price of Coinbase wouldn't go way too high. Speaking of written options, let's check out the Leveraged Shares 2x Capped Accelerated MSTR Monthly ETF as of the 31st of October 2025. Here we see written call options on strategy incorporated with a notional amount of $1,131,942, which is quite substantial. They also wrote put options for a notional amount of $565,971. This strategy of buying and selling options is how they aim to get that double leverage effect they are going for. Now, on page 28 for the Leveraged Shares 2x Long NVDA Daily ETF, we see almost everything is in money market funds totaling $5,915,803. This is a big chunk of their investments. But then we see total return swap contracts adding up to $4,009,482. These are essentially contracts where one party agrees to pay the other the total return of an equity for a fixed or variable interest rate payment stream. It's a complex way to get exposure to NVDA incorporated stock. Let's look at that Leveraged Shares 2x Long NVDA Daily ETF again on page 28. This fund has massive exposure through total return swap contracts with Cantor Fitzgerald, and company with a notional amount of $26,556,159 and a value of negative $12,780. They also have similar contracts with Clear Street LLC and Marex Capital Markets Incorporated. These derivatives are key to how these funds achieve their leveraged exposure. Jumping to page 37 where we see the statements of assets and liabilities for the Leveraged Shares 2x Capped Accelerated Coin Monthly ETF. Their net assets are valued at $902,924. More interestingly, paid in capital represents $884,139, which shows a significant amount of money investors put in. The total distributable earnings are $118,785, which means the fund is actually in the positive for earnings. Fast forward to page 42 and the Leveraged Shares 2x Long UNH Daily ETF shows a staggering net assets figure of $233,166,405, truly a giant in their lineup. Their paid in capital is also huge at $152,644, a clear sign of strong investor interest. Now let's decode what actually happened operating wise on page 45 for the Leveraged Shares 2x Capped Accelerated Coin Monthly ETF. Investment income was $6,272 primarily from interest, but the real action is in the realized and unrealized gain or loss section. They had a net realized gain of $113,751. Not too shabby for a fund that just started in August 2025. Flipping to page 49 for the Leveraged Shares 2x Long Hood Daily ETF. Here we see a massive net increase in net assets resulting from operations of $49,827,083. This is driven by a net realized gain of $27,592,470 from swap contracts. This fund has clearly been on a tear. Let's look at the financial highlights for the Leveraged Shares 2x Long AL Daily ETF on page 67. Their net asset value at the beginning of the period was $15 and ended at $13.81, a decrease of $1.19. This resulted in a total return of negative 7.94%, which tells us this fund did not have a great period under review. Now turn to page 71 for the leveraged shares 2x long NVDA daily ETF. This one tells a different story. Starting at $15, it ended at $23.10, a gain of $8.10. The total return, a whopping 54.01%, clearly an explosive period for this fund. And who is keeping an eye on all this? Cohen & Company Limited are the independent auditor, the ones who gave their seal of approval saying the financial statements present fairly. They've been on board since 2024 ensuring these numbers are solid. They also mentioned an interesting detail: the funds had no in-kind transactions for creations and redemptions, which simplifies things. Delving into the notes to the financial statements on page 98, we learn that the trust was established back in February 2023, and all these funds are part of it. The capped accelerated funds aim for twice the positive daily return of an underlying security, capping the upside. Then you have the leveraged funds, which aim for 2 times the daily percentage change in an underlying security. They use swaps and options a lot to make this happen. On page 103 on the fair value measurements, we see most investments fall into level 1 or level 2. That means they're either valued at readily available market prices or prices derived from observable market data. This is good news for transparency and indicates the valuation for these funds is pretty straightforward, not relying on highly subjective models for the most part. Check out page 126 for the tax information section. It mentions that the funds are treated as regulated investment companies, which means they usually avoid paying federal income tax if they distribute at least 90% of their income. Importantly, the funds made no distributions to shareholders during this period, a key point for tax planning. Overall, Themes ETF Trust is managing a complex set of leveraged ETFs. What we see is a mix of strong performers like the NVDA and Hood funds, and others that had a tougher go like the AL and ADB funds. The heavy reliance on derivatives, especially total return swaps, is a core part of their strategy, enabling that double leverage. But it also means investors need to understand the inherent risks. The fees are competitive at 0.77%, a reasonable charge for this level of targeted exposure. The company has strong compliance and risk management in place, as noted by the independent auditor and the board's review of advisory contracts, which is a positive sign. The fact that many of these funds have very short operational histories means future performance is hard to predict, but their strategy is clear, aiming to capture amplified daily returns of specific stocks. Alright, that is our dive into the Themes ETF Trust filings. What do you think about this leveraged ETF strategy? Are you in or are you out? Let me know in the comments below. If this breakdown was helpful, give us a thumbs up and subscribe for more corporate deep dives. And once again, make sure to join our Discord community linked in the description to keep the conversation going. Thanks for watching Corporate Decoder, and we will see you next time.